Sakhal isn't just cold, it's downright brutal sometimes. So it's almost written in the stars that players are going to make a few mistakes along the way. But here I'm going to go through some of the most common mistakes everybody makes on Sakhal, so every time you see someone make one, instead of offering any actual helpful advice, you can just be like, skill issue. If you liked the video, please leave a like or a subscribe, it really genuinely helps me out. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Let's see if I make it. No. Oh, wow. Wow, that sank faster than Ocean Gate. Let's start off with one I keep seeing, and it's really about the ice sheets. Trying to travel across the ice sheets seems like a tempting shortcut, but you might as well just try to stay on the coast because that's probably where you're going to end up soon anyway. The gaps in the ice can be huge, and swimming into that freezing water will soak you to the bone even for a short time in there. Once you're wet, the cold and a cold can set in quite quickly, and drying off in a blizzard if one hits is almost impossibly inconvenient, because you probably won't have a fire and shelter, especially with no trees. Plus there's just no loot out there, no food and nothing to shield you from other players or elements in general. Yes, there are ways to aid this, carrying sticks, rags, a broom, but then you're just a light source in a vast emptiness of the sea. Your best bet, stick to the coast and use a boat if you really need to cross. Boats are faster, safer, and you won't freeze to death halfway across the sea. Moving on, and this will be a quick one. I just need to get the word out on this. Boiling snow in a pot, thinking it's making it safe to drink, is another mistake that catches out a lot of players. Sure, it might seem logical to melt snow, but Sakhal's snow is loaded with heavy metals, and boiling it won't make it safe. Instead, you'll end up with heavy metal poisoning, which is a slow and nasty way to go. Use chelating tablets if you get it, but those things are modestly rare, and you don't want to rely on finding them when you're deaf and vomiting with hindered vision, or as I like to call it, the Amy Winehouse. This leads to the next common issue, heading to the peninsula without proper preparation. It's possible to survive the peninsula, aka Italy, right from the get-go, but it's not easy, and it's killing players by the dozen. The area is packed with wolves, infected, and other hostile players, and the biggest issue is the landscape is long and narrow, which makes it difficult to find places to hide, and lighting a fire out there is practically inviting snipers. If you're heading that way, stack up on ammo, food and medical supplies, especially food. There is very little food there. Make sure you're adequately geared and always be ready for a fight, because someone or something is usually watching you. Another mistake players make is hunkering down in houses during blizzards, especially near the coast. Okay, so this is a weird one, because inland this can be a solid strategy because fewer players are roaming around, but along the coast it's really risky. Don't do it along the coast. Other players are moving too, and they're using the coastal road to guide them through the storm because most things are whited out. They can't see much in the blizzard, but they can see you. And if you're sitting in a house with a fire, you're screwed. They're gonna kill you and take the fire. That fire noise combined with the howling wind means you won't hear them coming either. Instead, make a torch using a stick and a rag and keep moving. You'll stay warm without being stationary and are less likely to be ambushed. But if you come under fire, just be willing to drop that torch faster than Jack Black dropped KG. Next is another one I keep seeing. Don't climb the volcano during the day. I've seen way too many players try this, and it usually ends badly. The problem is that the volcano is super exposed. No trees, no rocks, no dead vegans who didn't have the protein to continue, and during the day you're a glowing target for anyone with a rifle on the coast or inland. If you have to climb it, either do it at night or at least pick a side that isn't visible to the entire map. But other than a cool view, there's not much reason to go up there. If you want a vantage point for navigation, use one of the tree-covered hills. You get almost the same view, but a lot more cover. Next up is running inland way too soon. This is a funny one as well, because the general rule of Chernarus is get gone as soon as you can, and this can be tempting and seems logical. Less chance of meeting hostile players, better loot, cooler points of interest, yeah? Well, nah. If you don't have the right gear, especially warmer clothing, running inland can quickly get you sick or easily overwhelmed. And while you can cure yourself with medication, it's better not to get sick in the first place. Why put yourself through the slog of trying to correct an easily preventable thing? If you're not properly prepared, take your time along the coast, get geared, and then make your move inland. Take your time, find your stride, and work the outer edge, kinda like foreplay. So very quickly before we move on, you've made it this far into the video, and if you like the content, maybe consider subscribing. For every subscriber I get, a tree gets planted. Not by me, but probably by somebody else. People plant trees all the time. This next one will kill you easily too. Not just kill you, but also massively inconvenience you in the right situations or wrong situations. Not taking altitude and temperature seriously is another common problem. The higher you go, the colder it gets. It's that simple. And while this might not seem like a big deal at first, being cold burns through your food way quicker, which means you'll run out of supplies before you know it. Plus, your cold protection wears off more quickly too, leaving you more vulnerable because it's another thing that needs correction at the expense of time and effort. Like my grandma always used to say, it's better to over-prepare than to freeze to death halfway up a digital mountain. Yeah, I think we were losing it a bit towards the end there. This leads on to another mistake that can be costly. Thinking red means your meat is cooked. When you cook meat in DayZ, the icon now turns red when it gets hot, but that doesn't mean the meat is safe to eat. It just means it's really hot and is cooking. If you eat it too soon, you'll end up with food poisoning, which is a huge problem when you're trying not to get food poisoning. Always wait until the meat changes from raw to its desired state before you take it off the fire. So far, I've seen quite a few people make this mistake. Next is another quick one you just shouldn't do. It's focusing on camouflage instead of insulation at the very beginning. Again, this is another one that feels counterproductive because I have so many videos saying what you should do is try to camouflage yourself, which is still good advice. Well done, old me. But in Sakhal, early on, your priority should be staying warm, not looking like a bush. Insulation is everything when you're trying to start out in Sakhal because it keeps you alive long enough to get the better gear. The better the insulation, the quicker you can get the clothing you actually want without being held back by temperature restrictions. Which leads me into another mistake people keep making. Although I said stay on the coast as long as you can, running along the coastal road like it's some kind of safe zone is a classic rookie error, because it's not. The road is a hot zone for snipers and other players just waiting for an easy kill. Yes, it's the main route if you want to go around and not through, but you should never run down it, especially with how densely packed the cities and towns are. Most people will be crossing between them now. My advice is stick to the side closest to the coast where you've got some cover from trees, bushes and the natural lay of the land. Sure, you might still run into players, but you're much less likely to get taken out by a lucky player with an itchy trigger finger. But the biggest mistake you can make, bigger than anything on this list, is not putting the time and effort into learning how you should survive. And by watching this video here, you could learn the tip or the trick that keeps you alive in a dangerous situation. Or for something else, you could click here. But as always, until next time.